Chopping up some college football as we like to do with Zach Smith. You can catch him, of course, on Menace to Sports. So the best way to follow him might be just go to Twitter at Coach Zach Smith. Catch him right there. Follow him to all of his various platforms. And again, it's Menace to Sports on your favorite audio platform. Zach, how we doing today?
I'm great, man. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Well, the talk of the college football world over the last couple of days has been Arch Manning. Okay. I'm gonna set this up the way I look at it. I am not a scout. I'm not an evaluator. I've watched a hell of a lot of football over the years, but I am not in that first category by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even know if I've seen him throw a pass or two. And even if I did, I would just know, okay, he's decent as a high school quarterback. I've looked at his stats. They're not eye-popping. They're good. I know the level of play that he participated against in a private league versus Louisiana produces the most NFL players per capita, but they weren't necessarily playing against Arch Manning. There's a funny video, and when I say funny, he didn't do anything wrong, but there's a video of him out there on a scramble, and he scrambles to the sideline. He gets knocked out of bounds, runs out of bounds, but it looks like he's playing a bunch of seventh graders that are running like six flats. So it's just, so what I can't believe, Zach, and this is a long intro, is that I can't believe that professional scouts, evaluators that rank everybody across the board would go out there and be so blinded by the Manning name that they would misevaluate him by that much. So how much have you seen of him, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think I've seen enough to know the kid can play, right? That's what you always start with. I mean, this best recruit ever, perfect score, all this other nonsense. It's been nonsense. It was nonsense with Quinn Ewers. It's just recruiting services doing what they do. The kid is insanely talented. He has a great arm talent. He's obviously got the pedigree, the last name. He's got the whole storyline, the clickbait storyline. Doesn't play against very good competition. And ultimately, I think what's going to tell the tale of Arch Manning in the end is how competitive is he? And I think the most concerning thing that I've seen and read on Arch Manning as a prospect is just his lack of attendance and willingness or desire to go out and compete against the best in the country, right? Not doing Elite 11, haven't heard anything about the opening or Army All-American games, not really doing camps. He went to some, as a young kid, he went to Clemson and did some, throwing workouts to get offers. But this kid just doesn't show right now that he is a competitor. That's not to say he's not. He just isn't doing things most prospects do to kind of go out and, defend the title for the number one quarterback in the country and live up to all this hype. We all saw the video. It's embarrassing the talent level he's playing against, but that same school produced Odell Beckham Jr. So it's not like there's no possibility he's a great player because he plays in this bad conference or against this bad competition. I just think my only concern is, like, why is he not going to the Elite 11 and saying, you know what, I am the king of this class and I'm going to go show everybody. And so, I mean, I think he made the right decision going to Texas. I think Sark is the guy that he should go kind of learn under and get developed by. It'll be an interesting battle and what happens with Quinn Ewers and him when he comes in early, but no one's going to know how good this kid's going to be until he gets on campus, goes through training camp, and has to go against a legit, college defense and how he, processes offensives. I mean, his uncles were well known for being ultra competitive and extremely smart. I mean, Peyton Manning knew what every defense was doing before they did it. He got into the perfect play every time. And I mean, he owned the field. We don't know if Arch Manning can do that because he's going against a bunch of Joes that, just are just bad athletes, if we're being honest. So the tale is yet to be written. We'll wait and see what he can do in a competitive atmosphere, but he is talented. So you can't take that away from him because he's playing against average at best competition.
Yeah, I'm tempted to make an evaluation of a few things I saw in that one play in regards to some of the guys that he was playing against, but we'll just leave it right there. That's what it is. Hey, they're out there playing football. They're competing. That's their level of play. And if I'm not mistaken, his two uncles played in the same league, same competition. Right. So it can be done. It's just not the best preparation for showing what you need to do at the next level.
Definitely.
Ohio State with 3 top 50 commits in 3 consecutive days, all at the wide receiver position. So that's amazing news. I don't know, it's kind of stacked up at one position. They could use help elsewhere, but I'm not going to downgrade it in any such way. So obviously Brian Hartline's being given a lot of accolades and a lot of attention.
He absolutely is, and rightfully so. I mean, what he's done in recruiting in the last couple classes. I mean, people forget last year's class was just kind of a under the radar class. He signed 4 receivers that were quality prospects, but no big names. None of this, not the hoopla that we watched over the last week. And it really is funny because not only did he do an excellent job, but there's a guy at Ohio State who does a lot of work also in recruiting receivers, helps Brian Hartline, is Keenan Bailey, who's an absolute stud. He was there when I was there. And so between him, Hartline, Ryan Day, I mean, they're just killing it on the trail right now. And I think it's absolutely planned, calculated, and convenient that Hartline had this massive 3-day run right before coach's vacation so he can go to Bora Bora or wherever he's going to go and have a cigar and not worry about a thing.
That's sweet. You mentioned Keenan Bailey. This is a name that I've heard pop up a few times, but I know very little, if anything, about him. We've got a Buckeye show that we do live for an hour on Wednesday, and some of the beat writers brought up the great work, as you just mentioned, that he does. So what exactly, not necessarily his title, but what does he do that complements what the rest of the coaching staff does?
He's just really innovative. He's really a smart kid who works really hard. I mean, he was an intern at Notre Dame, and Tony Alford, when he came to Ohio State a year later, brought Keenan on as an intern. He became my intern, and he's since elevated. I don't know what his title is. I don't know that it matters. He's doing the same things, but he's just really, I don't know how he's just really different. I mean, he's young. He brings a different vibe, a different energy. He does a lot of stuff around development, cutting up different drills and showing how those drills apply to games and then the NFL. He just does an outstanding job just kind of painting a picture for a recruit or a current player and say, listen, here's the process. Here's what we do. Here's why it works. And he's exceptional at it. And it all comes from hard work, and he's a smart kid, and he's an extreme asset for Ohio State.
So obviously we culminated with spring practice a few months ago, and that's when the entire team was together, playing football. At least they've been together since then. And I'm just talking about any football team in the nation. So you as a coach, coaching staff, where you're strong, where you're weak, what needs to change, what needs to happen between the end of April and getting everybody ready on the first day of August and getting to it. So if you've got a position that, wow, we're weak at safety, or wherever the position is, what can you possibly do between being on the field at the end of spring practice and the beginning of August camp to try to correct some things and make some just create better football players magically, in a sense?
Right. Well, if you look at it, it's kind of a unique time, that third quarter, right? That post spring, but pre-training camp window. It's a 3-month window. And obviously it starts with a position coach putting together a detailed plan on how they're going to develop their players, right? It starts there right after spring ball, but it's unique because you look at it, it's May, June, July. That's what you have. In May, the coaches are on the road recruiting, gone. So it's really the strength coaches are doing everything with these kids, from physical development to making sure they're doing all the drills that you want them to do, all the extra work. The strength coaches are in charge, right? And then the coaches get off the road recruiting around Memorial Day. And then they have the month of June. There's camps, there's visits, but you have time with your players, right? To go on the field, do some work, meet in the classroom, teach football. You have that month of June. And then right about now, the end of June, these coaches, they hit the road for vacation. I mean, they usually get 3.5 weeks off, and that's the only time off you have all year. So you go with your family out of town. And again, it all falls back on the strength coaches. So the strength coaches are with those players all of the end of June and through July until you get back. And then it's time for training camp. So it's really, there's a lot of onus that falls on the strength and conditioning staff, because out of the 3 months, they have the kids basically solely for 2 of the 3. So as a position coach, you need to check in, you need to have a plan, make sure it's being executed. But that strength coach is the one that's really, turning the heat up on these players and getting them ready for training camp.
Zach Smith, Menace to Sports. Catch him on your favorite audio platform. Follow him on Twitter. You see it right there on the banner, Coach Zach Smith. So your coaching career started early to mid 2000s, correct?
Yeah, 2005 was my first year as an intern, I guess you'd call it.
Okay, so we're looking at 17 years now. based on what you know of what's going on the field in training camp and elsewhere throughout the season, how much hitting is going on now versus when you first started?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of rules, NCAA rules that have changed since 2005 as it relates to how many two-a-days you can have, how many back-to-back practices, how many contact practices. So that's just from a legal standpoint, right? There's a lot less opportunities for contact because of NCAA rules on what types of practice you can have. But there's also been a ton of education for coaches on proper drills and how much contact is too much contact, what types of contact. So there's far less contact in practice than there used to be, but I would say it's more intelligent contact, right? You're still getting the contact work done you need to get done. You're just putting a priority on safety. And one of the biggest things that has come out in the last, I'll say 5 to 7 years, is the impact hydration has on concussions and some of those contact injuries. So you see these programs that Ohio State's a great example. Alabama does it. Pretty much everyone does it, where they hydration test athletes before practice. I mean, they have them all pee in a cup and they test their pee. And if it's not at this hydration threshold, they're not allowed to practice. They have to crush Gatorades until they're hydrated enough, because if their brains aren't hydrated enough, it's a little too dry. They're more susceptible for concussion. So the science and education has gone through the roof, and it's truly been awesome for the athlete, just the health of an athlete. So there is definitely less contact, but there's just more calculated and more intelligent decisions when it comes to contact and preventing those type of injuries.
I know I'm going to butcher this standard, but you can correct me on it. Urban Meyer had some kind of standard that, if you're Joey Bosa and you've put in 1,000 reps on the practice field, we know what you can do. We just want you standing there looking at the scheme, and you don't need to hit anybody because we know what you can do.
Yeah, it's a little self-serving too. As much as it was, we know what Joey Bosa can do. It was also, we'd like to get a playoff on offense and not face Joey Bosa. So why don't you sit over there for a minute so my offense doesn't look bad? But yeah, I mean, everyone has a reputation, everyone has a resume. You kind of earn your keep. And if you're a guy like Joey Bosa, who after his sophomore year was one of the best players in the country, you're still going to go through individual. You're still going to do some inside drill. But when it comes to team versus offense at the end, not a lot of snaps needed to be seen from Joey Bosa, not only because of the risk of injury, but we're also trying to, run a run play and not get beat up in the backfield. So there's definitely something to be said about that, but you have to manage it. It's all a management issue, right? Joey Bosa still needs reps. He can't just sit on the sideline and be a great player and go become a Hall of Famer. Like, you still got to work. You still got to get better. So it's picking and choosing where to implement those work periods and how to make sure he's still getting refined, and you're minimizing risk and maximizing production on the other side of the ball.
Zach, there's a lot of reasons why we're attracted to football that make the game great, and one of them is just to see guys that can run 1,000,000 miles an hour and hit like a ton collide. It's just, it's entertainment. It's great. And if we could play video games with these guys and we wouldn't risk injury, we would all love to see, rules go away, just let these guys just hit each other. But of course, we're trying to find a happy medium in terms of, it's football. It's football. It's a collision sport. It should be played like that. That's what it was created to do. But at the same time, let's be as safe as possible. Do you think we've arrived at a decent place, or would you change anything in terms of where we stand right now?
Well, I think I understand the intention behind some of the stuff they've done, but they've really, they've changed the game. I mean, a lot of these rules, a lot of these, ejections for targeting, and I think there's a lot of it's misguided when defensive players are set at such a disadvantage, and they're not really eliminating some of these hits, right? Because they're not penalizing the proper athlete. Where we saw it Sean Wade in the Clemson game where he goes to hit Trevor Lawrence in the back. Trevor Lawrence feels it coming and drops his profile down, and it ends up helmet to helmet. Like, whose fault is that? That's Sean Wade's fault? That should be Trevor Lawrence's fault, right? And running backs the same. Running backs will go running. They see contact and they'll dip their shoulder and lower their head and create helmet to helmet. And we're penalizing the defensive player. If they truly want to eliminate helmet to helmet shots, I think they have a lot of reforming to do when it comes to these rules, because an offensive player should be penalized just as such as a defensive player. So I get it. I know what they're doing, but they've made it almost impossible to play defense. And, some of the rules they put in are great. The kickoff rules, the wedges, getting rid of those. Because, there was a day when I was at Florida back in the early 2000s where there would be a 4-man wedge and you had 2 walk-ons and their sole job was to run 40 yards as fast as they can and slam their face into a wall of people. And that's just crazy. It's barbaric. So some of the rules have been awesome for the safety of the player, but then some of them have made the game hard to play. And so I think that's where they really still need to refine it and go back and really find that happy medium. All right, this is for player safety, but let's still let these kids play the game.
We are just about a month away from Big Ten media days across the country, and then right into August camp, and then 4 weeks away from the big openers. Ohio State, Notre Dame's the headliner. Do you have any kind of early feel on that one? The feedback I'm getting from the fans, and somebody asked me something about fans the other day, and I was trying to be very complimentary to say I don't form my opinion based on the feedback I get from fans, but it sounds like Buckeye fans they're not only anticipating a win, they're anticipating like a 3 or 4 touchdown win. Notre Dame fans seem to be more calculated, like, I think we can compete in this game and hopefully we can pull it out. Do you have a feel for where these teams stand?
Well, I think I'm not big on predictions until training camp because so much happens in training camp, not only injuries, but also just the development of a team. I mean, Ohio State fans forget that they had one of the most atrocious defenses they've had in a long time, merely 8 months ago, right? So to think that is just an immediate fix because they paid a guy a lot of money and he had success somewhere else, that's not always the case. Is it possible? Yes. Will it happen? I think it will, but we don't know that yet. And so, at the same time, I really think that what you've seen is Marcus Freeman, maybe saying some things out in the media that can be perceived as shots at Ohio State. And Ryan Day's kept his mouth shut. And that tells me that he really believes in what he has on the field. And he's going to let that do the talking. The other thing that makes me think that Ohio State has an extreme advantage in this game is Notre Dame is pushing a select number of high-profile recruits they're in the middle of. They're trying to push them not to go to the game. That would tell me that Notre Dame doesn't really like their chances and doesn't want that kid on the sideline witnessing what might happen on that Saturday night. So those are the things I look at. But it's too early to tell. This Ohio State team, we know the storylines. Marvin Harrison Jr., the C.J. Stroud, this Jim Knowles defense. I read it all. I see it all. There's still so much to be done in the month of August that they could be the best team in the country come September 3rd, but they also might still need some development on the defensive side of the ball. So I think it's too early to tell.
And yeah, of course, the perfect script is that Jim Knowles fix everything right before they ever hit the field, but there's no preseason games. This is the only sport, no preseason to get things fixed against live competition. So maybe the best script is the offense carries them, the defense gets better week to week, and it's a finely tuned, oiled machine by the end of the deal, but they get carried by the offense for the first half of the season. They just keep getting better and better on D.
But I think that's what they do have. I mean, I think the offense, there's no doubt about it, it's going to be lethal. I think the addition of Justin Fry as the offensive line coach is going to pay dividends in the run game, in the offensive line's performance. And that was really one of the biggest question marks about this team is, can the offensive line play at a very, very high level? We know the skill they have at receiver. We know the backfield they have. They have 3 running backs that I think are NFL running backs. C.J. Stroud is, if not one of the top 2 quarterbacks in college football. So we know what their offense has. And I agree. I think that's going to be the storyline. If the defense isn't what people think it is yet, Ryan Day and CJ Stroud in this offense are just going to have to just score every time they touch the ball and just carry this team as they go through the growing pains that are going to come. New system, a bunch of players that haven't played at a very high level. There's going to be some growing pains. As long as the offense can set the pace, I think they'll be fine.
All right. It should be intriguing because the expectations are where they typically are, top 2 or 3 in the country competing for a national title. Coach Zach Smith, that's the handle on Twitter. Follow him there, Menace to Sports. It's a great podcast that uploads each and every day. Zach, appreciate you stopping by, as always, laying down the knowledge for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.